1977. 1977 was a tough year for the old man and me. On July 1st, 1977, in a hard rain on a Saturday morning, my mom left the farm for the last time. She had hired a local guy with a pickup truck and a very big trailer, and she took the last load of family belongings with her to go set up camp in her mom's home, who had just passed away on the other side of Montreal, about 2 hour drive away. She took my little sister with her. She was already gone. She'd been gone for a couple of weeks. And my brother had left home. He was 18. He left home about 2 weeks prior to the last day. Didn't want to be around. On that day in particular, my father left as well. He didn't want to oversee the removal of the last furniture and family belongings. So just before she left, she came into the garage where I was fiddling with my motorcycle. I had a 1965 Honda 90 street bike that I tried to soup up to be able to take in the dirt. It had knobby tires, and I'd stolen the forks off of an old Yamaha dirt bike, and it barely ran. And she came in to say goodbye, and I remember standing there inside the garage door in the rain, and her giving me the speech that I was always welcome, and but I knew I wasn't welcome, and I knew things were about to change dramatically for me and for my father. So she left. I watched the truck drive away. I went into the house, great big Victorian farmhouse, and it was pretty much empty. She took everything. I remember going into the living room, and there was a three-legged sofa and nothing else. No television. She'd left my father's books, but she'd taken anything that had been acquired during the marriage, anything that she thought she could use or sell, and there was nothing. Just this giant living room with no place to sit. In the kitchen, she'd left two plates, two bowls, two cups, two forks, two knives. She was making a point, and I think she was trying to make the point to my father, but she really made the point to me. So it was mid-afternoon. I decided to sit down on the floor in the living room and absorb this scene. And I don't know, a couple hours went by, and it was still raining hard, and I could hear my dad's car coming down the dirt road, that 73 Buick Century. And he pulled into the driveway, came in the kitchen door, walked into the living room where I was sitting, and looked around and said, "Wow, she took everything." And then he looked down at me and he said, "You hungry? Let's go into the village and get a piece of pie." That was pretty much his good-humored way of dealing with almost all crises. Cup of tea or something to eat, particularly a piece of pie with ice cream to cut the sugar, he'd say. Um, and we had our favorite place in the village called the Cantine pour vous, which was here in the village of Waterloo, close to where I live now. And so we got in the car and we drove to Waterloo. We had ourselves a meal and a piece of pie, and we came home. And my father said, "Let's put the ping pong table in the living room." We had a ping pong table in the dirt floor basement. So we spent the evening taking the ping pong table apart and putting it in the living room. And Mister, we played ping pong all that night, and most of the rest of the summer and into the winter as well. We couldn't afford furniture, so we played ping pong. He was a tough nut. There's no doubt about it. But he had three qualities that I admire to this day and wish I had more of than I do. One was he had a very positive sense of humor about tragic things. He'd lived through a bunch of difficult times and tragic times, and he wasn't gonna be down. He was going to work to be positive about just about all situations, even something as tragic as this. He um, he was a man of reason. He didn't like to act in anger or in rage. So he took his time and he thought things through before he formulated a reaction. And finally, he was a person who wanted to move forward. He didn't want to look backwards and focus on history. knew we were in a situation and we were going to have to figure out the next steps. And um, I think that was just about the best way to spend the rest of that terrible day. And it helped me move on to the next step. That was a really big day for a 15-year-old, and little did I know on that afternoon that how many changes were coming my way over the next few months. And my father was going through a lot himself, something I could simply not appreciate. I was pretty focused on my own bag of issues, but with retrospect, it would have been nice if I could have been a little bit more understanding of his, but I wasn't. And that culminated in an event that happened later that same month. I had uh, I had acquired my first set of rock concert tickets, and I was quite excited and proud about it. At 15, I was the last of my crowd to have not been to a rock concert, and this was the year of Frampton Comes Alive, and I had tickets to see Peter Frampton at the Montreal Forum with my best buddy George, my sailing partner, and it was all I could think of for weeks. But I was out of control. I was seriously out of control. And at 15, I had access to my father's two cars, a 69 Buick and a 73 Buick. And I drove them like a maniac through the village without any parental supervision, to the point where the village of Foster, many of the residents who liked me and whom I liked a lot, but the owner of the general store, McBride, the owner of the grocery store and slaughterhouse, Mr. Beaudry, the butcher, and a few others got together and told my father that I was going to kill somebody, including myself, and that he needed to intervene. So, being the tough guy that he is, he confronted me in front of the garage one day about what he'd been told, and told me that my punishment was going to be a grounding that prevented me from going to the rock concert, which emboldened me to go to the next step of I'm just gonna go. You're not gonna stop me. And this escalated till my father did something that he had never done to me before and never did again. He wound up and he took a giant swing at me with an open hand. Now, I saw it coming, and I know how big and strong he was, and I pulled back, and his hands just brushed the front of my face. And his other hand came up to give me another go at it. And I said, "Don't you do it. If you hit me, I swear I will never talk to you again." Now, this was the tough nut. He's not a guy that backs down from a fight. And he knew I wasn't kidding. And he stood there staring at me. I don't know how long it was. Felt like half an hour. It was probably about 25 seconds. And then he turned his back on me and walked into the kitchen of the house. And I wasn't going to let him go. I followed him in, and we sat at opposite ends of the kitchen table, staring at each other, just staring each other down. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything, and I'm sure he was trying to control his anger. And finally, he looked across the table at me and he said, "You want a cup of tea?" What can you say to that? I said, "Of course I want a cup of tea." So he said, "Well, get up and put the kettle on." We made a cup of tea, and we went out and sat on the front porch, which faced due west. We watched the sun go down. We never mentioned that incident again. Never did he ever try and hit me again. He didn't say he was sorry. I'm not sure he was. I think I might have deserved a good ass kicking, given my behavior at the time. But I'm glad he didn't hit me, because I would have ended the relationship there. I would have been gone. So I think that's an example of how Charlie had the ability to reason, to not to act out in rage, to not let his emotional tendency at the time take over his behavior. He was controlled. He was capable of great violence, but knew that that was a last resort, and once you've resorted to it, there's no going back. And he didn't want to lose my companionship, particularly at that particular moment.